Welcome to Purpose Over Pain, where love meets mindset. I'm Courtney Ryan, and I'm here to help you level up your heart, your hustle, and your life. Today, we're diving into something that might be hard to hear, but even harder to ignore. Relationships are beautiful, but they can also be fragile. And the truth is, most men don't realize something's wrong until it's too late. So let's talk about the 7 signs women give before they cheat. Signs that so many men overlook or dismiss, but could save your relationship if you catch them in time. When a woman begins to withdraw emotionally, it's rarely random. It's a sign that something deep inside her is changing. And the truth is, most men miss this shift because it doesn't come with loud alarms. It comes quietly, slowly, subtly. One day, she's texting you throughout the day, telling you about every little thing that happened, sharing her thoughts, asking about yours. Then, all of a sudden, her responses become shorter. One-word replies, dry, lols, delayed answers. And eventually, total silence. You start wondering, is she just busy? Is she tired? Is something on her mind? But instead of asking, you might brush it off, hoping it's temporary. That's where so many men go wrong, because emotional withdrawal is not a phase. It's not moodiness. It's not her being difficult. It's the first sign that her emotional tank is running dry, and she no longer sees you as the person who can fill it. When a woman loves a man, she wants to connect with him. She wants to be known, seen, heard, and understood. If she doesn't feel that anymore, she starts to detach. Not because she wants to cheat, not even because someone else is already in the picture, but because something fundamental in her emotional experience has shifted. She starts to protect herself. She starts to retreat. She stops sharing, not because she doesn't have anything to say, but because she doesn't think you'll listen in the way she needs you to. Or worse, she's already accepted that you won't. You'll notice she stops venting about her problems. She used to come home and tell you how stressful her day was. Now, she keeps it to herself. You ask how her day went, and she just says, fine. You sense a wall, but you can't quite figure out when it went up. And that's the thing. Emotional withdrawal doesn't happen overnight. It's built from layers of unmet needs, unspoken frustrations, missed moments, and quiet heartbreaks. A woman will give chance after chance, often without saying it. She'll hope you notice, hope you step up, hope you care enough to ask her what's really wrong. But when enough time passes without that kind of connection, she stops hoping, she stops trying. The next sign that follows is disinterest. Not in everything, just in you. She used to ask you about your dreams, your goals, your day. She was curious, invested. But now, she doesn't ask anymore. Not because she doesn't care about your life, but because she feels like you no longer care about hers. And eventually, indifference takes the place of affection. She won't fight with you anymore. She won't get upset when you forget something important. She'll just nod, smile, and turn away. That's emotional withdrawal in full bloom. The things that once lit her up about you no longer reach her heart. The connection feels forced. Or worse, dead. You might notice she laughs more around her friends, but not around you. That she seems more alive at work or in social settings, but comes home and goes quiet. Maybe she's scrolling more on her phone or spending more time away from the house. And while it's easy to say she's distracted or preoccupied, the truth is, she's starting to detach from the place she used to feel the most safe. And once a woman stops feeling emotionally safe, once she feels like her vulnerability is a burden instead of a bridge, she closes off. Not out of spite, not to punish you, but to protect what's left of her emotional energy. This withdrawal often makes men more confused than ever, because nothing big has happened. There wasn't a fight. There wasn't a dramatic moment. She didn't say she was unhappy. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. But that silence is not peace. It's resignation. That lack of conversation is not comfort, it's distance. And if you look closely, you'll see the signs were there all along. The empty looks, the shorter hugs, the quiet nights, the missed chances to ask her, what's going on in your heart? She gave signs not through words, but through absence. Absence of emotion, absence of connection, absence of the woman you used to know so well. Men often mistake emotional withdrawal as mood swings or female complexity, but it's actually simple. She's hurting. She's disconnected. She's lonely, and she's starting to look elsewhere for that feeling of being seen and heard. Maybe she hasn't cheated yet. Maybe she never will. But this is the space where emotional affairs are born. This is the crack in the foundation where temptation creeps in. Because what women seek when they cheat is rarely just sex. It's intimacy. Emotional closeness, the feeling of being understood and desired. When she doesn't feel that from you anymore, she starts to crave it elsewhere, sometimes even unconsciously. And before you know it, the emotional gap between you two becomes a canyon, one that she no longer believes can be crossed. When a woman stops fighting with you, it's easy to assume things are finally getting better. The arguing slows down, the tension seems to dissolve, and she starts responding with calm indifference instead of heated emotions. But that shift, as peaceful as it may feel on the surface, is often one of the most dangerous signs of emotional detachment. When a woman is still passionate about the relationship, she'll speak up. She'll push back. She'll argue, cry, get frustrated. and demand more from you, not because she wants to nag or criticize, but because she still believes the relationship can be saved. She still sees potential in the connection and is trying to get through to you. That energy, even when it comes out in conflict, is a form of emotional investment. But the moment she stops reacting, stops caring about the disagreements, stops bringing up what's bothering her, that's the moment most men think the storm has passed, when in reality, she's already letting go. Emotional silence is not a sign of peace. It's a sign of surrender. She's no longer trying to convince you to understand her. She's no longer hopeful that you'll change. And that quiet resignation often comes just before the emotional door fully closes. You may notice that the things she used to get upset about, your tone, your inconsistency, your lack of attention, no longer spark the same response. She doesn't bring them up not because they don't hurt, but because she's emotionally exhausted. She's had the same conversation in her head over and over again and has come to the conclusion that talking to you about it won't change anything. So she detaches. She smiles more, argues less, and seems easygoing, but inside, she's already begun to grieve the version of the relationship she once believed in. That silence, that calmness, is often the last stop before she emotionally checks out and begins looking elsewhere to feel heard, seen, or desired. This behavior shift is subtle but powerful. She'll nod instead of object. She'll agree just to move the conversation along. She'll stop correcting things that used to bother her, not because she's okay with them now, but because she no longer sees the value in addressing them. When a woman gives up on fighting, it's not a relief, it's a warning. Because behind every fight she ever picked was a desire for connection. Behind every complaint was a plea to be understood. When those pleas stop, it's because she no longer feels that fighting for you is worth the emotional toll. And it's not that she wants to hurt you with her silence. It's that she no longer believes her voice matters in the relationship. She's trained herself to stop hoping for change, to stop being disappointed, to stop craving something you either couldn't or wouldn't give her. That emotional self-protection becomes a wall you don't even realize is being built. One moment, you're just thankful there's no more drama. The next, you're wondering how you drifted so far apart. This is the phase where many men think things are going smoothly. They mistake her quietness for contentment. They assume the lack of arguments means everything is fine. But under that surface is a woman who is no longer emotionally investing. A woman who has mentally started to picture life without you. A woman who's begun to redirect her emotional energy toward other outlets, friends, hobbies, even other men, because she no longer feels that her emotions are safe or welcome with you. Her tone may become neutral. Her eyes might no longer light up when you walk into the room. You might notice she doesn't initiate conversations anymore or avoids deeper discussions. She may stop asking for affection, stop expecting effort, stop waiting for consistency. That withdrawal isn't indifference, it's protection. She's preserving the parts of herself that felt trampled on when she tried to speak up in the past. And once she stops bringing up issues, it's because she has fully internalized the belief that nothing she says will ever truly matter. This emotional detachment can sometimes be mistaken for maturity or growth. But it's often just the final chapter, before she physically or emotionally exits the relationship. It's the silence before the storm you never saw coming. And by the time she reaches this point, she's not looking for you to suddenly step up. She's already made peace with walking away. The connection that used to fuel her desire to fix things has eroded, and what's left is the shell of a partnership she no longer feels a part of. This is when her energy begins to shift outside the relationship. She becomes more independent, more focused on herself, and less responsive to your attempts to reconnect. Because once a woman learns to be okay without your emotional presence, she stops needing it altogether. When a woman suddenly starts putting more effort into her appearance, it's not always about self-love or confidence. Sometimes it's about seeking something she no longer feels she's getting from her relationship. This change doesn't always scream infidelity, but it can whisper dissatisfaction. And most men don't even realize it. They assume she's just trying to glow up or that she's finally taking care of herself after a slump. But what they often miss is the timing, the shift in intention, and the emotional undertone that comes with it. She might start dressing differently, maybe a little more revealing, more fitted, more intentional. She could begin wearing perfume more often, fixing her hair even when she's just running errands, wearing makeup on days she used to go bare-faced. And while on the surface these seem like innocent changes, they often indicate a craving for attention, validation, or excitement. Not because she's shallow or seeking admiration from strangers, but because she's feeling overlooked, unappreciated, or disconnected from the man she's with. It's not just about physical changes. It's about behavioral shifts that align with those changes. If she suddenly becomes more secretive about where she's going, spends more time getting ready than usual, and doesn't offer the same transparency she used to, there's a reason. Maybe she's not cheating, maybe she hasn't even considered it, but emotionally, she's opening up to a world where she feels more noticed, more valued, more alive. That transformation in how she carries herself often mirrors a transformation in how she feels inside. A lot of men are quick to say, "I love her no matter how she looks." And that's beautiful in theory. But what they don't realize is that it's not about whether you think she looks good. It's about whether she feels desired. And if she doesn't feel that desire from you anymore, if the compliments stopped, if the looks faded, if the effort from your side disappeared, then she starts wondering what it would feel like to be wanted again. She starts seeking that spark elsewhere, sometimes even subconsciously. And when a woman no longer feels sexy in the eyes of her partner, she either suppresses that part of herself or goes looking for someone who will awaken it again. This is where attention becomes a powerful drug. If she starts getting compliments from people at work, from strangers online, from a guy friend who suddenly seems more interested, those little dopamine hits begin to replace the emotional nourishment she's missing at home. She starts dressing for those compliments. She starts noticing who notices her, and even if she's not acting on those feelings, the emotional attachment begins to shift. Because it's not just about how she looks, it's about who makes her feel seen. You might notice that she doesn't ask your opinion on her outfits anymore. She used to walk out and say, "Do I look okay?" Now she walks past you without a word, already knowing she looks good, already knowing someone else is going to notice. That disconnect is telling. And it's not born from vanity, it's born from a lack of connection, a lack of spark, a lack of intimacy. When women feel emotionally distant, they often try to reclaim their power through their physicality. It's a way of saying, "I still matter, I still attract. I'm still worthy of attention." Even how she behaves in public might change. She may walk with more confidence, speak with more flirtation, hold eye contact with others in a way she didn't before. Again, this doesn't mean she's cheating. It means she's experimenting with what it feels like to be desired again. And if her partner isn't meeting that need, someone else might. She might not even realize that's what's happening. But deep down, it's that emotional hunger driving the external change. If her sudden glow up comes without any communication, without any shared excitement, without a sense of inclusion, that's when it's worth paying attention. If she used to want to go shopping with you, and now she's buying things in secret, wearing outfits she doesn't show you until she's walking out the door, that's a shift. It's not about control, it's about transparency. It's about the change in energy and intention. Most men don't see the connection between emotional distance and physical reinvention. They assume everything's fine because she looks good, because she's smiling more, because she seems happier. But that smile might be for someone else. That extra care she's putting into herself might not be for you. And if you don't ask the deeper questions, if you don't stay emotionally engaged, you might wake up one day and realize the woman standing next to you is already halfway out the door, wearing heels you've never seen and a smile that's no longer for you. When a woman's phone habits start to change, it's not always innocent. And the most revealing part isn't always what she's doing, it's what she's hiding. The phone becomes a mirror of emotional reality. A woman who once left her phone lying around screen up, notifications visible, now keeps it face down. She starts carrying it everywhere, even to the bathroom. She guards it more closely, pulls it away when you come near, or suddenly puts on a passcode when she never had one before. These might seem like small details, but they're part of a bigger pattern that most men miss. Because when trust begins to crack, secrecy fills the space. At first, the changes seem subtle. Maybe she used to text around you, respond freely, laugh at memes, and show them to you. Now she turns away to reply. Her screen dims quickly. She switches apps when you walk in the room. There's hesitation in her hands, a new kind of energy around that device, an invisible wall that says, "This is mine, not yours." And while everyone has a right to privacy, there's a fine line between privacy and secrecy. Privacy is healthy, but secrecy has a weight to it. It carries avoidance, guilt, and emotional disconnection. When a woman starts hiding her phone activity, it's not always about cheating, but it is always about distance. The phone becomes the gateway to a new world. Maybe it's not another man. Maybe it's emotional validation from social media or a friend who suddenly seems to take priority in her emotional life. Maybe it's late night, scrolling through things she doesn't want you to know she's looking at. But often it's something deeper, conversations that replace the emotional space you used to fill. Digital flirtation, secret DMs, emotional intimacy disguised as harmless banter. It doesn't always start with physical cheating. It starts with connection, attention, and the thrill of being wanted again. A woman doesn't suddenly fall into someone else's arms. She slowly drifts emotionally, message by message, moment by moment. You might sense a change in her mood. She smiles when her phone buzzes, but not when you speak. Her eyes light up for a text, but stay dull during your conversations. You begin to feel like a background character in her story instead of her co-star. That's not paranoia, that's awareness. And if you ignore that shift, you're choosing comfort over clarity. When her digital life becomes more vibrant than her real connection with you, that's a sign she's seeking emotional stimulation elsewhere. Not necessarily because she wants to betray you, but because she's no longer fulfilled where she is. The danger of emotional affairs through a screen is that they're easy to justify. It's just talking. We're just friends. You're overreacting. But the emotional intimacy she's developing with someone else is not harmless. It's replacing the intimacy she once had with you. Every conversation she hides, every message she deletes, every moment she shares with someone else that used to belong to you, it's a step further away from the relationship you think you still have. And by the time you notice, she may already be emotionally invested in someone else's validation. You may also notice that she gets defensive if you bring it up. She might accuse you of being controlling or insecure. But what's really happening is projection. When someone has something to hide, they often flip the narrative to avoid exposure. They create emotional distance to avoid the conversation they're afraid to have. And that resistance isn't about protecting her phone, it's about protecting the connection she doesn't want you to see. It's about guarding something she's not ready to admit, maybe not even to herself. There's also a shift in time. You notice she spends more hours on her device, often late at night. The texts come at odd hours. She stays up after you go to sleep. She says she's just scrolling, but her attention is elsewhere. And attention is currency in a relationship. Where she spends it says everything about where her heart is leaning. If her phone becomes her escape, her comfort, her secret space, then the intimacy you once shared is now competing with a screen she won't let you near. Technology makes it easy to connect, but it also makes it easy to hide. When a woman starts using her phone as a barrier instead of a bridge, that's a red flag. Not because she owes you full access to every message, but because the shift in behavior reflects a deeper emotional transition. When she begins to trust her phone more than she trusts you, when she feels safer in her digital world than in your arms, when she's more emotionally open with someone on a screen than the man she wakes up next to, it's no longer just about boundaries, it's about emotional absence. When a woman stops talking about the future with you, it's rarely accidental. It's a deep, quiet signal that her heart is no longer invested in the same long-term vision. Relationships are built on shared dreams, plans, and the anticipation of what's to come. When she was fully in love, she probably used to talk about where you two would travel next, what kind of home you'd build together, even the names of future kids or your wedding playlist. That kind of talk wasn't just fantasy. It was a reflection of her emotional security and belief in what you were building together. But when those conversations disappear, when she no longer brings up next month, next year, or even next week with you in mind, it's often because she's begun detaching emotionally and silently preparing for a life that no longer includes you. It doesn't start with a dramatic announcement. Most of the time, it begins in quiet ways. She stops bringing up date ideas or future vacations. She no longer talks about moving in together or buying a house. Her language changes from wit to I. She becomes vague when you mention anything that requires commitment. If you ask about plans for the holidays or talk about saving money for a shared goal, she dodges the conversation or offers generic answers. It's not always that she's lost interest in life. It's that she's lost interest in building it with you. A lot of men confuse this silence with being chill or easygoing, thinking she's just living in the moment. But women don't stop dreaming, they stop including you in their dreams when they stop believing in the relationship. That lack of future talk isn't her being flexible. It's her quietly stepping back, reclaiming emotional space, and making room for uncertainty or new possibilities. And sometimes, those possibilities include someone else. Because when a woman starts to imagine life without you, even if she hasn't left yet, the emotional gap is already forming. This withdrawal from future talk can also be seen in how she handles milestones. She forgets anniversaries, seems disinterested in celebrating relationship landmarks, or brushes off big moments with a casual attitude. She stops asking you about your goals, your 5-year plan, your dreams. Not because she doesn't care about you as a person, but because she no longer sees your paths as aligned. That emotional misalignment shows up in the absence of questions, the lack of curiosity, and the shrinking effort to build something long-term. You'll also notice it in the decisions she makes. She may start planning solo trips or making big life moves without consulting you. She might accept a job in another city and present it to you as a final decision, not something you're invited to weigh in on. She might start focusing more on her individual life, her own future, her personal development, but not in a way that includes you as her partner. That shift in independence is sometimes praised as growth, but when it happens in isolation from the relationship, it often means she's preparing herself emotionally to stand alone. It's not always that she's met someone else. Sometimes it's just emotional exhaustion. Maybe she brought up the future too many times before, and each time it was met with indecision, indifference, or resistance. After a while, hope fades, and instead of begging for vision, she pulls away and stops asking. The silence around the future becomes a way to protect herself from further disappointment. She stops building castles in the sky because she's tired of watching them fall apart. You might even feel like things are more peaceful now. Fewer deep talks, fewer disagreements about what's next. But peace without purpose is a sign of emotional disconnection. When she stops wanting to build, it's often because the foundation no longer feels secure. Maybe she doesn't trust your consistency. Maybe she's still waiting for you to show her you're serious. Or maybe she's just given up trying to make the relationship more than it is. It's also possible that she's doing all of this quietly, even kindly. She doesn't want to hurt you. She doesn't want a messy confrontation. So she pulls back gently, hoping you won't notice how she's slowly untangling her heart from yours. That's why the absence of future talk is so powerful. It's not loud, but it speaks volumes. It's a form of emotional self-preservation, a way for her to create distance without causing damage. But that distance is just as real, just as heavy, and just as telling as any loud fight or tearful goodbye. When a woman starts comparing you to other men, even subtly, it's never random. It's not just a passing comment or a throwaway observation. It's a window into how she feels emotionally, and more importantly, what she feels is missing. Women don't typically make direct comparisons unless they've already noticed a gap in the emotional connection or level of effort they're receiving. And when those comparisons start, it's not always to provoke you. It's often a cry for recognition, a silent plea for something she's been trying to get but no longer knows how to ask for directly. She might mention that her friend's boyfriend sends her flowers just because. Or maybe she talks about how her co-worker always brings coffee for the office, or how someone she knows plans thoughtful dates. To you, it might sound like harmless storytelling, maybe even gossip. But what she's really doing is holding up a mirror, trying to show you the reflection of what she's missing. She doesn't want to nag or criticize, so she uses someone else's actions to highlight the void she feels. It's an emotional comparison, not just a situational one. And if you brush it off or get defensive, you miss the entire message she's trying to communicate. This behavior usually doesn't start out of nowhere. It comes after a period of disappointment, unmet expectations, or feeling invisible. Maybe she's been asking for more affection, more communication, more thoughtfulness, and feels like her needs are falling on deaf ears. Over time, those unmet needs turn into frustration, and frustration turns into detachment. But instead of lashing out, she begins to express that detachment through comparisons. It's her way of testing the waters, seeing if you'll even notice the change, seeing if you'll care enough to ask what's going on beneath the surface. What makes this sign so easy to miss is that the comparisons don't always seem serious. They can sound casual, even humorous. Wow, Mark takes his girlfriend on monthly trips. That's so sweet. Or, did you see what Sarah's husband did for her birthday? That was amazing. But underneath those comments is often an emotion. She's trying to process envy, sadness, loneliness, or regret. She doesn't necessarily want to be with the men she's referencing. What she wants is the effort those men are showing, the attention, the initiative, the consistency. And she's silently wondering why she doesn't feel that in her own relationship anymore. When a woman compares you to another man, especially in emotional or relational ways, it's rarely about the other man, it's about how she's starting to feel unfulfilled. And if those comments become more frequent, sharper, or more direct, it's a sign that her frustration is growing. She's reaching a point where silence isn't working, and comparisons are the only way she knows how to communicate the gap she's feeling without starting an argument. But if those comments are dismissed or met with defensiveness, the emotional damage only deepens. You may also notice that she starts admiring other men's traits more openly, like leadership, confidence, empathy, or emotional intelligence. Not because she's being disrespectful, but because those are the traits she feels are lacking in you at that moment. And when admiration turns outward, it often means emotional needs aren't being met inwardly. She starts tuning into the way other men treat their partners, noticing their words, gestures, and consistency, and wondering why she doesn't feel that same spark, that same sense of being chosen. Eventually, these comparisons can erode the foundation of your relationship. They plant seeds of doubt about your compatibility, your effort, and even your value in her life. And the more those seeds grow, the more emotionally distant she becomes. What began as subtle comments turn into emotional withdrawal, where she no longer feels inspired by your presence, no longer feels excited about your love, and begins to see what's missing more clearly than what's working. That clarity can be painful, especially when she starts believing that someone else might be better for her, not necessarily because he is, but because he seems to offer what you no longer do. She may not even be aware that she's doing it. Sometimes the comparisons slip out in moments of vulnerability, other times in frustration. But once she starts looking outside the relationship for emotional standards, for examples of how love should look, it's a clear sign that she's stopped feeling emotionally fed within the relationship itself. And once she stops believing that you can, or even want to, meet those needs, she begins emotionally preparing herself for the possibility of life with someone who will.